Ah, the Roman Republic. We have this image of stoic senators in clean togas debating philosophy while building an empire. It's a fantastic image. It's also mostly wrong. From the moment they kicked out their last king in 509 BCE, the Republic was basically one long, simmering, 500-year-long argument between two groups of people, the patricians and the plebeians. The patricians were the old money families, the one-percenters who claimed they could trace their lineage back to the founding fathers of Rome. Everyone else was a plebeian. That's it. You were either in the club or you weren't. And the club's main activity was making sure you never, ever got in. So, in 494 BCE, the plebs got fed up. They were fighting in Rome's wars, getting zero reward, and falling into crushing debt. A popular form of this was nexum, a fun system where you could be enslaved to your creditor to work off a loan. It's like an unpaid internship, but with more whipping and less hope. The patricians refused to reform anything, so the plebeians invented the general strike. They just left. The entire working class packed a lunch, walked out of Rome, and set up camp on a nearby hill. Suddenly, Rome had no farmers, no workers, no soldiers. Just a bunch of very important patricians realizing that speeches don't harvest grain and money can't serve itself wine. This little walkout worked surprisingly well. The panicked patricians agreed to some concessions, the most important of which sounds absurd today. The plebs wanted the laws written down. Before this, the law was whatever the patrician magistrates remembered it being, which, coincidentally, always seemed to benefit the patricians. It's easy to win a game when you're the only one who knows the rules and you can change them at will. The result was the Law of the 12 Tables, around 450 BCE. 12 bronze tablets set up in the forum for everyone to see. They weren't exactly a Bill of Rights. One law still allowed creditors to cut up debtors and divide the pieces, but it was a start. Knowing you could be legally dismembered is somehow better than it being a surprise. The other big win from the first secession was the creation of the tribune of the plebs. This was a political office elected only by plebeians, and it came with an incredible superpower: the veto. A tribune could walk into the Senate, listen to the patricians pass some self-serving law, and just say veto, which literally means I forbid. That was it. Bill dead. To protect them, tribunes were declared sacrosanct, meaning anyone who harmed them could be killed without trial. The patricians had effectively created an office whose entire job was to be a thorn in their side, and they made it illegal to remove the thorn. A masterpiece of unintentional self-sabotage that would have fascinating consequences later on. Fast forward a few hundred years to 1330 BCE. The rich are richer, the poor are poorer, and massive estates worked by slaves have replaced small family farms. Enter Tiberius Gracchus, a tribune of the plebs from an aristocratic family who decided to actually do his job. He unearthed an old law that said no citizen could own more than about 300 acres of public land, or ager publicus. The thing is, every wealthy senator owned thousands of acres of it. Tiberius wasn't proposing anything new. He just wanted to enforce a law that had been on the books for centuries. The Senate's response was thoughtful debate? Just kidding. They organized a mob led by the chief priest that beat Tiberius and 300 of his followers to death with wooden clubs and threw their bodies in the Tiber. So much for sacrosanct. 10 years later, Tiberius's younger brother, Gaius Gracchus, gets elected tribune. Apparently, the family had a thing for lost causes. Gaius didn't just want land reform, he wanted subsidized grain for the urban poor, public works projects, and extending citizenship rights. He was basically running a whole political platform. The Senate, having learned from its past mistakes, decided to try a different approach. Nope, sorry, they did the exact same thing, but bigger. They invented a new trick called the Senatus Consultum Ultimum, or the final decree of the Senate. It was a declaration of martial law that basically said, do whatever is necessary to protect the Republic, which was code for hunt down Gaius and his friends. Gaius was killed, along with 3,000 of his supporters. The era of solving political differences with clubs was officially upgraded to solving them with state-sanctioned massacres. The Gracchi affair proved that political norms were dead. The next person to kick the corpse was Gaius Marius. He was a brilliant general who faced a problem. Rome was running out of soldiers because you had to own land to serve in the army. But the rich had taken all the land, creating a massive population of poor, landless, and very bored men. Marius had a brilliant, terrible idea. In 107 BCE, he abolished the property requirement and recruited these men into a professional army, promising them land and loot upon retirement. Suddenly, Rome had a fantastic military. The only tiny issue was that these soldiers were loyal not to the abstract idea of the Senate and people of Rome, but to the general who paid them and promised them a pension. They were private armies waiting for a purpose. The purpose arrived in the form of Lucius Cornelius Sulla, one of Marius's former lieutenants and now his bitter rival. In 88 BCE, the Senate gave Sulla a prestigious military command. Then, after he'd left the city, Marius's political allies had the command transferred back to Marius. Sulla was displeased, so he did something no Roman general had ever done. He turned his army around and marched on Rome. He marched his own legions against his own capital to settle a political score. The city fell, his enemies fled, and the most sacred taboo of the Republic was broken. After he left for his military campaign, his enemies retook the city and got their revenge. So, naturally, when Sulla returned in 82 BCE, he marched on Rome again, just to make sure they got the message. Having conquered his own country twice, Sulla decided to clean house. He declared himself dictator and invented a charming political tool called the proscription. These were publicly posted lists of his political enemies. Anyone on the list was condemned to death, and their property was confiscated by the state. It was a fantastic deal for Sulla's friends. You could kill a rival, get a reward from the treasury, and then buy his fancy villa for pennies on the dollar at the state auction. Thousands were killed. Fortunes were made overnight. It wasn't just about political cleansing, it was the brutal, logical endpoint of class warfare, where wealth and life itself were just spoils for the winning side. Sulla eventually retired, thinking he had fixed the Republic. He hadn't. He had just shown everyone the new rules. The lesson was clear. Laws are for people who can't afford an army. The Senate was powerless, the office of tribune was a weapon, and the only real political question was who had the most loyal legions. All the underlying problems, the massive wealth inequality, the land crisis, the political disenfranchisement, were still there. They were worse, in fact. Sulla's career provided the perfect playbook for any ambitious man who came after him. A playbook that a certain young man named Gaius Julius Caesar, whose family had been targeted by Sulla, was studying very, very carefully. So, the Roman Republic didn't fall to a sudden invasion or a single decisive battle. It was a slow, agonizing process of self-immolation that lasted centuries. It was a system torn apart by a fundamental, unresolved conflict. The powerful refused to give up anything, and the powerless had nothing left to lose. Every act of violence, from the clubbing of Tiberius Gracchus to Sulla's prescriptions, was just another step down a path that could only end one way. The rich won the class war so decisively that they broke the entire system that made them rich in the first place, paving the way for an emperor to rule over the ashes. And that's a pattern humans have gotten really good at repeating. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more historical insights. Thanks for watching, nerds!